Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Holidays are coming, holidays are coming. Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Yes, it's nearly that time for holiday season again. And hey, after a bad year, let's start it early, eh? But one thing that has been troubling me is adult advent calendars. What is that all about? I'm going to age myself now, but my first advent calendar just had pictures in it. And I was quite happy with that as a kid. But then came along the tiny piece of chocolate. But now there are $200 calendars with everything from perfume to bottles of beer inside. So I've got to ask, what is the best and worst that you've seen out there? And also send me a picture of your advent calendar when you get it, please. You can do that by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com. But hey, I digress. This is a tech podcast, not a Neil's Guide to Christmas advent calendars. And they do say that the tech world is quite a small place. But today's guest last spoke with me 3.5 years ago. But our paths have crossed again, and it is a small world, as they say, but I wouldn't like to paint it. But we're going to talk today about Pulse Zero Trust Access, which is a cloud-based multi-tenant secure access solution that enables organizations to provide anywhere access to multi-cloud and data center applications, all with zero trust. And anybody that knows anything around that, and anybody that knows anything about that world knows that that involves spinning a lot of plates, and that utopia is not as simple as it sounds. But the guys at Pulse Secure seem to be doing a good job of that. So buckle up and hold on tight so we can speak once again with Scott Gordon. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. But for people that missed our first conversation, can you remind the listeners of a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Scott Gordon. I'm this Chief Marketing Officer at Pulse Secure, which is a leading secure access vendor in the information security market. And we essentially allow companies to have users and devices securely communicate to applications and resources, no matter where they exist.
Now, at Pulse, you provide secure access for the next generation, but security is a crowded space, especially now. So can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses, and ultimately, what makes you different from all those other solutions out there?
Me too. So in terms of the problems we solve, and keep in mind, so Pulse Secure is fairly established. We're well over $150 million company. We're global. So chances are your listeners, if they've made an airline reservation, if they've streamed a movie, if they've done some form of social media, and certainly more likely if they have connected into their office from their home or on the road, there's a good probability that you've been touched by Pulse Secure. So we have software that operates on endpoints, on systems that allow a secure connection in a variety of different ways from that user and the device to a application or a resource on a network or a public network or a SaaS application. And not only is it securing and making sure the connection is appropriate and secure and protected, but it also has a whole bunch of other features to ensure security, such as making sure that the device that they're using is secure, that they are who they say they are, and that everything is captured and auditable. So that's essentially what we do. What makes us a bit different is in today's age where not only do you have your traditional data centers, but you also have cloud applications and resources, and the trend of companies adopting multi-cloud. We have the means to allow companies to centralize all their secure access facilities So they gain operational oversight, they gain operational and provisioning proficiency, but allow them to ensure really great user experience from the user's device of choice to appropriately connect to the resources no matter where they exist. And so you have a solution or approach that's highly interoperable, that's modular and flexible, and that's more importantly proven by over 24,000 enterprise customers and service providers across the world. So that's what really differentiates us from other vendors.
And the world has changed so much since we last spoke. And to highlight the scale of the problems that you're tackling at the moment, a recent Cybersecurity Insider report cited that 72% of organizations experienced an increase in endpoint and IoT security issues due to the massive move to remote and at-home workplace. But can you tell me more about these challenges and how organizations can adopt a zero trust policy, not just working from in the office or working from home, but ultimately it's working from anywhere, isn't it now?
That's right. So if you look over the past 12 months, everybody's acutely aware that we've gone through and continue to address a pandemic. It caused a massive shift for users to have to work from home or be more remote. And this trend is continuing, and that companies of all sizes and all industries are now having to not only meet capacity and capabilities, but also they're now looking at longer term workplace flexibility. So a lot of companies are saying, hey, coming to the office will be optional when things clear up. Or they'll allow for broader remote workers since they're seeing good productivity from work from anywhere. I think what that report illustrates is that it's not just about capacity, but it's also about user experience and security. And so the challenges are that there's an increase in phishing and identity theft. There's an increase in unauthorized access. There's many more and a wider variety of devices that are accessing resources, not just on the network, but also resources in the cloud. And so how do you get oversight? How do you protect that sensitive data? How do you ensure not just user experience, but that the security posture of the user and the device that is accessing sensitive information is up to date, is authenticated, is validated? And that really lends itself to this new zero trust model. So zero trust is a model that presumes that there's no difference between inside a network and outside a network, and rests on the tenet of validating everything before granting access to resources and information. So we're talking about identity authentication, device authentication, security posture assessment, and doing this on a continuous basis. And by applying an assessment, a risk assessment on a continuous basis, you then can have adaptive controls, or essentially adaptive access to resources. So if I'm accessing resources as a end user and I'm accessing HR resources, I may have certain basic requirements, but if I'm now the HR administrator or a system administrator for the back end of that HR system, I may have increased authentication. I may have very specific security features on my device that I need to have activated and in place. Maybe only corporate issued devices may be enforced. And so these are the conditions that make for what is a zero trust mode. It's a mode where you're combining controls to assure continuous risk assessment and verification of users and devices, and appropriate access to and least privileged access to resources and applications.
And enterprises have, of course, traditionally deployed security with appliances to mitigate different threats. But the new trend is cloud delivered security. So, what organizations or what should organizations consider for zero trust when it comes to securing access to hybrid IT and multi cloud environments? Because I think things quickly get complex, and that maybe that's what puts a few people off. But it doesn't have to be that way, does it?
No, I think it's a good question. I think it's a matter of enterprises really taking a look at what are their business requirements, and that's really what drives this initiative of how to enhance secure access capabilities. So companies are looking at the benefits of cloud delivered security today. They're looking at the benefits of easier provisioning, easier licensing, more rapid deployment. If they're using a security service or security managed security service, the ability to have broader expertise, the ability also to have these systems maintained. So there's a lot of advantages towards cloud delivered security, but at the same time, there are potential limitations in terms of application support, potential limitations in terms of regional support and communications, potential limitations with incident response. So these are some of the considerations that organizations have to look into. It really starts first with, okay, what are your data privacy obligations for certain information and certain applications? That's one area. Second thing is it really requires companies to map users and resources to understand which types of users need appropriate and least privileged access to which type of applications and resources, and what are the conditions, the security conditions for that access. Whether you want that operationally to be managed by your company, whether you want to go with a service provider, or whether you want to have it as a cloud, pure cloud hosted service by a security vendor. What type of processes and incident response and management processes may you have to change with your current organization? How do you deploy this? As you're moving to the cloud, are these systems readily available? Will you have to have data that hairpins to additional cloud resources before security capabilities can be processed? So all these things must be assessed, but it typically will come down to what are the business needs, what's the economic advantage and operational advantage, and really taking off, having that aligned to a path towards taking advantage or full advantage of cloud migration and cloud delivered security.
And I believe you recently released Pulse Zero Trust Access, which is a cloud-based multi-tenant secure access to do just that. But just to bring to life everything that we're talking about today, can you possibly share the story behind this release and how Pulse Secure could actually enable customers and service providers alike, make that journey to the cloud so much more secure and easier?
Sure. Let me share some background. So certainly, again, we have over 24,000 customers and service providers that use our secure access software, whether that's our virtual private network, our VPN software, which today in the market, 85% of the world is making secure connections through VPNs. It also includes things like network access control and application delivery controllers, so for load balancing, mobile device access. So all of these solutions typically operate with our software that operate on appliances or virtual appliances that could be managed by enterprises by themselves, typically, or through managed service providers that will operate our systems. They will support their customers with our software. And so the new trend, the new move, and we recognize this as companies would like to have this software just hosted in the cloud, taking advantage of provisioning, scale, management, visibility. And so our approach was to, again, have our customers be able to have the most flexibility to implement and scale our secure access solutions, whether it's on-premise, in data centers or distributed data centers or multi-cloud. And so we've essentially re-architected our solution to be a true multi-tenant, cloud-based and cloud-delivered application. That software is hosted in Azure, so we have significant points of presence, and we can ensure regional data sovereignty. And so now we're allowing customers and service providers the ultimate in flexibility for their migration. Our solutions can coexist. Our traditional conventional software appliances can and client software can coexist with this new cloud delivered solution, and that's called Pulse Zero Trust Access. And by doing so, it allows them to, again, get uniform visibility, uniform management, centralized administration, broad application support, all those things that one has to consider with potential trade-offs when they would move with a vendor to the cloud. With Pulse Secure, you essentially are getting it all, where you don't have to take certain considerations of whether something will work on-premise or whether it'll work through a cloud-delivered service, or what would be the migration path, and do I have to operate and administer two separate systems to get functionality. In this case, it's all encompassed in one. So as customers migrate to the cloud, as they bring on more users towards this zero trust network access platform, they can just simply turn it on and it'll work. It'll support their environments.
And there is so much innovation with big data and cloud-delivered security right now. So how are these new capabilities being applied to zero trust network access? Because it sounds like an incredibly exciting space at the moment.
It really is. So zero trust network access, which is it's also termed software-defined perimeter by the Cloud Security Alliance. It essentially is, again, making sure that the user, their device, the security posture of that access is assessed. And if it meets policy, it allows that connectivity. But because we understand from the endpoint all the way to the application, we capture all that detail. It also provides all that data provides a lot of capabilities. One thing is visibility. So instead of having islands of access, and which makes it hard for incident response, it makes it hard to modify and change uniformly access controls. It makes it challenging to do centralized auditing. Now with this connectivity and with all this data, we're able to bring all this information in one data store. And it really provides administrators and auditing and IT security ops people all this information at their fingertips. So now visually you can understand who or what is accessing resources, what is the throughput for that access, what are the most popular resources. And again, since now you're doing big data, you can apply machine learning. That's the really interesting, innovative area. So with machine learning, we can actually identify and track users' normal activity, their normal behavior, and compare that to compare any activity against what we've captured as a baseline for normal. We can compare that to other roles, similar roles, and their access. We can compare the information about their device or their authentication of the user. And we can then apply with machine learning, essentially mathematical algorithms to say, okay, is this a deviation from norm? And is that deviation an anomaly, or is it truly malicious? So by using big data, we can essentially automate all the risk access. We can automate all the things to identify threats that much faster. And then you can actually, by way of policy, automate a threat response. So for example, Neil, let's say you normally are accessing a resource from your home at a certain time of day. And then all of a sudden we see that there's a second access, and this is from a different device, and this is from a different region that's simultaneously accessing a sensitive resource. We can immediately now identify that, and by policy, automatically block the abnormal access. Automatically send you a note to say, hey, we're identifying unusual activity, or we can send it to the security ops team to say, okay, do you want to actually reset all of Neil Hughes' access provisions because of the potential security threat? And that's essentially what big data and machine learning is now being applied for secure access. It's really dynamically automating risk assessment. At the same time, it's allowing greater visibility so companies can make informed decisions.
And one of the things I always try and do on this Daily Tech podcast is give the guest an opportunity to bust a few myths or finally lay to rest some misconceptions out there. So I suspect that there's more than a few that you've encountered, but I've got to ask, are there any myths, especially around secure remote access, that you would like to finally lay to rest today?
Thanks for the opportunity to bust some myths. So I think we're with this move to greater workplace flexibility and work from home. There definitely have been a lot of myths around that in terms of specifically, for example, virtual private network technology, VPN technology, that perhaps it's insecure, insufficient, or causes user experience problems, or in order to get some of the zero trust tenets of user authentication, device authentication, and security posture assessment, that all those things are not possible with VPNs, and that companies should immediately go towards an alternative technology. And I can understand, when you have a new technology such as Zero Trust Network Access, there's a tendency to say, okay, out with the old, in with the new. But for many companies, they've made significant investments in VPN technology, and they're amortizing those investments over time. So there's an economic consideration. But in the reality, VPN, again, during this transition, was the most popular secure access method. And the reason why that people stayed with VPN is because it's a known entity. They know it works. They know how it works. So one myth is that VPN is insecure. That's all software needs to be maintained. All software has security risks, but it's no more insecure than even some of the other alternative security measures. Every security vendor is under attack. Every security technology is under attack, and so you have to be vigilant to maintain your environment and take on new patches. The second thing is zero trust tenants. It's not solved by one product, so it's really a coordination of controls. But if you look at VPN technology does have multi-factor authentication capabilities. Modern solutions do very thorough endpoint compliance. They have automated remediation capabilities. They do have secure posture assessment and user behavior analytics. So it can get you very close, if not meet the type of zero trust access needs that you might have. In terms of performance, I will say that VPN technology, for example, does send both control data, that's the control attributes, as well as application data to a VPN concentrator. So it does send everything to a network. And for many companies, they do want that. They've built in technologies for deep packet inspection and content inspection, that they want everything to go through the network, which does place a burden on performance. But certainly the VPN technology today allows for load balancing and increased capacity that's fairly straightforward. But it also allows for things such as split tunneling, where you can send certain control data to the VPN concentrator, but it still will allow a connection to a cloud application. So not all the information needs to go to that VPN concentrator. So that can ease some of the throughput congestion, if you will. Again, a lot of the myths that you see of dropping what you have and going to something different is it's, again, more of a myth than a reality. And so, like anything else, companies need to take some business considerations, understand their investments, their operations, their deployment impact, how well they've mapped users to applications and resources, and then make decisions, make solid informed business decisions on those areas. So there's a lot of myths around VPN technology, but most of those myths are not well founded.
Excellent. And I think there are a lot of business leaders at the moment trying to find that right balance of providing employees with a way to work remotely and securely and be more productive. But on that front, can you share how Pulse Secure is enabling your employees to work remotely more while increasing business productivity too? Because it is such a fine balancing act, isn't it?
It really is. So again, since we're a secure access company, we had a fair amount of advantages. The majority of a good number of our employees work remote, and we already had been giving some decent workplace flexibility. But like everyone else, we shut down all our offices. We made travel only if absolutely required, and so we too had to increase our capacity. And we also had to firm up some of the security requirements for remote access. And that was pretty straightforward within our systems. But we definitely had to increase endpoint compliance controls. So we had certain classes of users that had to have additional forms of authentication. We invoked some certificate-based authentication for certain devices for certain types of users. These are folks such as did do technical support that would have to remotely access resources as if they were on-premise. This also included our operations teams. We also had to enhance some of our resources in terms of remote access in different regions. But it was fairly straightforward. It was all centrally managed, centrally controlled. And it's the same experience that a lot of our customers went through. One of the things that we have as a option within our traditional VPN solution, for example, is something called an ICE license. And in case of emergency, a license which allows it's licensed on a per appliance basis and allows for peak load and license sharing for over a 2-month period. So it's sort of like an insurance policy. Well, a lot of people invoke that insurance policy and bought that ICE license at the beginning of 2020, right when the pandemic hit and when they had to massively move resources for remote access. It bought them a lot of time to understand, to meet the capacity, and then to understand what changes they need to add more permanent license. So that ICE license came in handy. And what we've also found is a lot of these companies now have beefed up their capacity because they're anticipating longer term growth. The other unique thing that we saw out of this was enterprises using next-gen firewalls had a bit of a struggle really adding capacity economically, and provisioning timing was challenging. And so we saw a lot of companies, our software interfaces with next-gen firewalls, so we can actually offload all the SSL decoding that would impact the throughput of a next-gen firewall. We can offload all of that into our system. And because our system sits essentially behind the firewall, we can allow for much faster provisioning and expansion. And it also allows for more efficient administration because it gets very complex when you're managing firewall rules at such a granular level for secure access. So we found a lot of companies that had next-gen firewalls and had turned on the add-on feature for VPN actually now offload that to PulseSecure to handle the VPN load and allow their firewall, their existing firewall, to operate more efficiently.
It's been fantastic to have you back on the podcast. But before I do let you go, could I ask that you remind the listeners of where they can find you guys online and also contact your team if they are left with any questions after listening to our conversation today?
Sure. Well, we have a lot of research, a lot of good information that can be found at PulseSecure. So www.pulsesecure.net. And that will allow them to not only peruse and learn about our solutions, but also we have a wide variety of good research and good information, such as emergency preparedness toolkit and risk calculation and best practices. All that can be found on our website.
Well, I think it's been 3.5 years. Can you believe that, since we last spoke? And so much has changed in the world since that time. And I suspect that next time we speak, it would have changed even more. But hopefully we're not going to leave it 3.5 years till we speak again. But absolute pleasure to get you back on the podcast. So more than anything, just thank you for coming back on and speaking with me again.
Well, thank you, Neil, and appreciate all that you do and how you keep everyone informed. So much appreciated, and looking forward to more open times and more engagement.
I think every business leader has been challenged in 2020 to provide the ability to work from anywhere and everywhere, boost productivity, and do it all securely. So, a multi-tenant secure access solution that enables organizations to provide that anywhere access to multi-cloud and data center applications, all with zero trust, is quite an accomplishment. But how have you and your business adapted to life in 2020 and that ability to work from anywhere and do it securely? What have you learned? What would you do again? What would you not do again? Please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. If you want to talk seriously about tech and about everything that we've discussed today, send me a message. If you've got a simple question, send me a message. And if you've got a photograph of your $200 advent calendar, send me that across too. Other than that, I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.